Barn farm here. We've got a Polaris RZR here, and the wheel bearings are pretty much almost bad. See how you can hear it? And the wheel is very hard to turn over. So what we're going to do is take off the wheel and we're going to grease them, grease the bearings, and we're going to use grease gun, ratchet. You need a 15mm socket, wrench, an 1 16" socket, 19mm socket, good impact, and then the grease fitting. You can get this grease fitting on eBay for 10 bucks. I'll show you how it works. So after you take your wheel off, you'll need to take the cotter pin out. After you take the cotter pin out, you got to take the castle nut off. Take the rotor off, and then before you take off the rotor, you got to take off the brake caliper. There's 2 bolts on the back that hold the caliper on. One right there, and one right there. They're both 15mm. Break them loose, you take it off, and you just lay it to the side, slide the rotor off, and we'll grease it. Alright, hold on, we'll get back with you. Well, now I got the castle nut broke loose. Just take it off. And now I got the 2 bolts on the back for the rotor broke loose for the caliper. You just pull the caliper out and just set it to the side. And then you just pull the rotor off. And there you are at the bearing. Well, see, there's your CV axle. You see how bad that bearing looks. Alright, I'll show you how to grease it. You just take your tool, slide it in, all the way in, make sure it's flush. Take your grease gun. And then you just pump it full of grease. Well, we're done pumping it. Now you see the grease coming out. Once you see the grease coming out, the only thing you do is pull it off, clean up the grease, and you mount everything back. And we'll show you the difference of the wheel being turned once we get it back on. When you get everything back together, we'll show you the difference in it being turned. So just hang tight. Now everything's back together. Castle nut on. Cotter pin back in. Bolts tight. Bolts tight. Now just put the tire on. We got the tire back on. Let's see how much easier it spins. It doesn't sit there and stop immediately. So it takes about 10 minutes to do each one. This is the rear. You have to have a wrench for that bottom one down there. 15mm wrench. Top one you can get with the socket and the ratchet. I've already done this one and this one, now the front right. Only one I got left to do is the front left, and that's it. Takes about 10 minutes per tire, and I'm using marine grease because marine grease will hold up a lot better riding in the creek and lakes, because where this thing travels in the creek and mud and in the lake, it does trail also. Now if it didn't go to the creek, didn't go in the mud, you would want to use that red tacky. The Manufacturer's grease on all of them, Polaris's, Yamahas, all of them suck when it comes to wheel bearing. Just go to get some grease from your local store and be a lot better off. Because these wheel bearings in the front were screaming really bad with the Polaris only having 200 miles on it. Really bad. Every time you went, every time you go anywhere, this thing was just screaming in the front. So with the new grease in it, hopefully it won't be screaming anymore. So I'll get on to the next one. We got the same issue on the front left as we did on the right. Very hard to turn, and it just immediately stops. It don't keep rolling, just immediately stops. So that's the reason why I said the front bearings were really bad. So that's where we'll take off the tire and do the same thing to this side. So be back with you. Alright, we got the cotter pin out. Castle nut broke loose. The 2 nut bolts on the back broke loose. And we just take it out. Take out the brake caliper, put it aside. Take the rotor off. And there you are at it again. Again, about 10 minutes. And you should be able to be where you're done. Unless you run into problems. You just insert the tool and grease her up, and I'll show you how much. So now we got the grease coming out. Just pull the tool out. And she's all greased. Clean her up, put her back together, and you're done. Now we got the castle nut tight, cotter pin back in, and the brake caliper back on and tight. So it's all put to get back together. Just gotta get the tire on there, spin her over, and make sure she spins freely. Now she spins a lot better. She doesn't stop immediately. But it's that simple. 10 minutes. Grease them. It'd save you a lot of money in the long run. Grease, tube of grease, $6. Don't go about and buy the Polaris grease, Yamaha grease. Just go get you some marine grease if you go a lot of creek riding. And do it that way. Save you a lot of headache, because the manufacturer's grease are garbage. You might ask what I use. I got a 1/2 inch Milwaukee M18 fuel. Very good. Very, very good. Just whenever you go tighten everything down, don't go more than setting 2 and you'll be fine. You go setting 3, you'll break stuff. Setting 2, you'll be fine. And no, I did not need a second person to hold the brake. So you ain't got to have a buddy to help you to hold the brake to make sure it don't spin, because the Milwaukee will break it loose with no problem. Some other impacts, you may have to have a person, but if you have the right stuff, it helps. Just don't go out and get a garbage impact. Milwaukee is the best. And literally 40 minutes, 10 minutes per tire, and that's it to re-grease them. And you go to a dealership, that charge you $100 to do it, plus the parts and everything else. It ain't worth it. Just get you a grease gun, get the fitting on eBay, $10. It's a 44 millimeter grease fitting. $10 on eBay. That's all it is. And you can use it. Then you'll need an 1 1/16 for the castle nut, 19mm for your lugs, and a 15mm for your brake caliper to take them off, and a wrench for the back. That's it. Literally. A lot cheaper than going to a dealer. Any questions, comments, please, and I'll be glad to answer them. Please like and subscribe. I definitely need them.